I rise to wrap up the debate and this important piece of legislation, and in particular to thank the two members who have made contributions to this bill and has helped in the elucidation of the importance of this piece of legislation which enjoins us to the international community. And in the context of our own relationship within the UN system, member of the General Assembly, not a member of Security Council, but certain matters determined by the UN Security Council are binding on all members, particularly if there are decisions taken under a particular chapter, and more particularly if they relate to issues of security. Very interesting, though, is that in the context of the very UN Security Council, they are the power brokers, the influential five, who, while it is not specifically enumerated as a veto power, in the practice of the operation, they exercise that. And you would have heard from the presentation from the member of Nevis 9 that a number of the members of that, if you will, higher level decision-making body of the United Nations have not yet signed on to this bill. Interestingly also is that perhaps maybe all of the powerful five, US, China, Russia, and so on, all of them would have nuclear power. And the resistance really is none of them want to yield what they conceive as an advantage. And in some case, there is a perception by other member states that the possession of this acts as a deterrent to people coming to fight you. Clearly, that has been part of the discussion with Iran. Should it give up what it has in terms of its own nuclear plant and their functioning? The Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. We have heard of all of these countries, and they have ended up being sanctioned from time to time for non-compliance issues in terms of verification of the state of their nuclear activity. So that is where we are at. But an interesting follow-through from that is that our policy in, as it was, supporting all efforts at non-proliferation is based on the principle, not an expediency and not an convenience. And it also indicates further that our foreign policy is captive to none. So even while the most powerful people in the world or countries may not prefer movement on this, we are taking this particular policy direction because it is the right thing to do, and the right thing to do at this particular moment in time. Another interesting fact that came through from the debate, and the Honorable Attorney General in his more expansive framing of the bill and contextualizing it, brought out the fact that the world has seen the results of nuclear weapons being used in ways that are harmful to humanity. And when he made reference to the Second World War, how it impacted Japan in a very direct way, and that it had consequences in terms of hundreds of thousands, 70 in the first instance, when the first bomb fell, And it has now become an interesting site for visit. I recall on my first visit to Japan, I was tempted to go, and then I changed my mind. Changed my mind. It was not to be on that particular occasion, but it was one of those places that you feel a pull to go see what this bomb of such great significance could do. It was out of efforts to end the Second World War that the United Nations system was in fact born. Born with a view that a new way of integrating nations, small and large, having them coming together and finding mechanisms by which through negotiation, conversations, and dialogue, there will never be again a need for a third World War. That is what the United Nations was about. It was a creation of people, of leadership that had been brought together, saddened by the calamity and the significant dislocation of life, loss of economic growth and development across the globe, that people again determined that they needed to work together as one. That institution then was born to give birth, as it were, to the efforts, to incentivize efforts for people to work together. I want just to emphasize the important point that the Attorney General also made, that we also already have certain pieces of legislation on the books. What this, for example, the Anti-Terrorism Act, part of the book. This is talking about this being seen by the Financial Action Task Force as part of the effort to zero in on the disruption of efforts to finance terrorist activities around the world. So we have a piece of legislation. And when the evaluators looked at it, they recognized that there were, as I said in the earlier bill, certain gaps within the legislation. These gaps are, as it were, now being addressed through this specific anti-proliferation financing of weapons of mass destruction. And so we are attempting really to deal with this one. And we are doing so again to be a good partner of the international community and to avoid any reputational damage to our country. In terms of the other issues which are of importance, they are matters which from time to time we will have to reflect upon and to come back and review the legislation as necessary. So, Mr. Speaker, again, in wrapping up the debate, I commend the contributions that we have had, and I wish this bill safe passage, and would ask that we would go into committee stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.